Yo, what's up, boys and girls? I'm Swolelax, and I'm back at it again. The video is something over today. Hey, you might be asking yourself, Swolelax, what's on your face? And I know I haven't shaved in a little bit. I really need to shave. It's only been a couple weeks, and this thing is growing in powerful. It is actually insane. We'll see how long it gets, though. It's gonna be actually kind of crazy. So you have to excuse me. So 3:30 in the morning. We usually been streaming every single night, or practically every single night. It's youtube.com/Swolelax. You guys follow me on Twitter @Swolelax. Then you guys can know every single time that I go live and hit that live link. Now, here's the funny part. I was gonna stream tonight. Full intention on streaming tonight. Special stream tonight. But instead, I was like 10 o'clock. I'm like, I'm feeling a little drowsy. It's a long day. You know, I'm just gonna take 30 minutes, just an hour to refresh myself, and then I'm gonna stream. Not gonna be super tired. Boy, was that a mistake. So instead, here we are. 3 a.m. comes on, and I'm like, okay, cool. Totally missed my stream. So we're gonna be doing this instead. And you also, some of you might also be asking yourself, by the way, I know I haven't quite addressed it yet. You're like, Swolelax, what's with the eye? What's with the eye? And to that, I'd say you have to be more specific. I've had 2 eyes my entire life. Okay, no, seriously. Again, it's early in the morning. So here's what happened. After I woke up from my nap, I was like, okay, I'll just go and I'll just go put my face mask on. I'll go back to sleep. Wake up in the morning. Blah blah blah. That didn't happen. What happens is I put on my face mask. I try to go on to sleep, and then I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm thinking way too much about heroes. No joke. I was like, man, I just have to get this out there. So it's been a long past time that we've done an elemental hero tier list, ranking each and every one of the monsters inside the archetype, the main deck, and the extra deck. I think the total counts to about 56 cards in total, and we're going to be reading some and ranking them right now in the side of this video. And if you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you want some more, please subscribe. Get more videos coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned for that if you'd like to. And in addition to that, if this video just gets 50 likes, we'll drop part 2. That's right. This is going to be part 1 of our elemental hero tier list, definitively ranking every single hero that's come out. Now, currently it is 2020, and if we get more heroes down the line, cool. But I want to separate them at least by E-heroes, Vision heroes, etc. So, we're releasing part 2 if this video gets 50 likes, and I know for a fact that this is going to be one of the most in-depth tier lists I think I've ever done. Because not only are we ranking this definitively, that there's no questions for whatsoever, I guarantee it. But hopefully this doesn't distract you too much from the important information that we're about to have on screen. In fact, there are so many monsters we're going to go over that it doesn't even fit on my layout. Isn't this crazy? Isn't this absolutely nuts? And so we're going to be going on with that a little more. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, starting out with the original E-heroes, I think is probably just the best way to go. You guys know I'm a huge fan of E-heroes. E-heroes in general have been my lifeblood instead of Yu-Gi-Oh! For the longest time, including Cyber Dragons, I guess, too. So there's been a couple variants. But we're going to start out with the original E-heroes, Avian, Burstinatrix, Clayman, and Sparkman. And it hurts my soul to do this just a little bit, just for a few different reasons. Now, one in particular, the fact that I like these cards a lot, and there's actually quite a new amount of utility with these cards based off of the new Infernal Divisor Link monster that came out inside of Dual Overload. Now, that's kind of neat and all, however, outside of turboing out some of these cards, it's a relatively low tier thing to revolve your deck around this strategy. Now, there are competitive versions of those decks that do run these cards now, but for a while now we've kind of known that the vanilla Elemental Hero monsters are more or less just going to be a fan favorite. They're going to be one of those card series rather, that you can fuse together specific things, and maybe you can use them as material. Obviously you can discard them with things like Vion, yeah, I guess Vion, but Ferris and everything like that. However, just on their own, not really that important and not really that great. In fact, most modern decks don't even run them anymore. But I'm going to stick them probably in the upper low tier just because, you know, you can run a couple decks with them. You can play around with them, have a nice and casual time, and they're so iconic. These cards, literally looking at the card art for me, just takes me back. And I love these cards so much. And it pains me to put them inside a low tier, and maybe we should put them in mid tier just out of straight respect. But I gotta be realistic. I gotta be real with you guys. So that's going to be it for those ones there. Not really a lot to talk about, of course, they're vanillas. They can be used for their specific fusion materials as well. So that's kind of why they're necessarily not going to be in table 500, because there are worse. There are worse elemental heroes. Next, we're going to go on, I think it's only fair, to talk about the other vanilla hero monster, and that is Neos. So here's the funny part. I actually was not going to include Neos on this tier list for the longest time. Then I really thought about it, and I'm like, it's probably best to put Neos on this tier list. It's an elemental hero, at least by name, but I've always kind of considered it to be more of a Neospacian monster. Again, 2500 level 7 vanilla beater isn't necessarily the greatest card, so I actually even put it lower than the original Elemental Heroes, which at least you can summon and use material for your Link monsters nowadays, or and also in addition to that, you can use them for their fusion materials, which, you know, hey, contact fusion's cool and all, but not really super great and not really super useful, though that new Neospacian support is actually kind of nice. Neos himself is not really that great. In fact, there are other cards on here like Blade Edge that are specifically better. Speaking of Blade Edge, we're going to be putting Blade Edge a little bit before Neo. So that gets us to our first effect monster of the day, and that is going to be Elemental Hero Blade Edge. Blade Edge being a level 7 2600 monster with piercing damage puts it a little bit above Neos because it has a little more utility. However, still, I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, I've been playing it on stream, an Elemental Hero deck that included Blade Edge. It's kind of just alright. Here's the thing. It takes a little bit of setup to get it out normally, and if you want to special summon it out otherwise, it's going to take a lot of setup. And you don't really need it inside the deck. You can kind of turbo out things like Plasma Device with things like King of the Swamp anyways if you're running a fusion-centric deck with these monsters in the first place. So there's not a whole lot of things that you can really do here to really make this card as effective as you want. Now, the piercing damage is kind of nice, and the big body is sometimes helpful. There's no real summoning restrictions on this thing, so that's pretty good. And just in general, its stat line is okay, but still solidly low tier. Solidly low tier. Now, moving on to the next Elemental Hero on our list, part of the OG Elemental Heroes, we're going to talk about Elemental Hero Bubbleman. So, Bubbleman, actually, I'm going to be putting it inside of the high tier. That's right, we have our first high tier of the actual tier list, and that's going to be Elemental Hero Bubbleman for a few reasons. Of course, it's been an all-star player inside the hero deck for the longest time, and actually just recently got power crept by things like Liquid Soldier. This thing is able to special summon itself out onto the field as material, which is great for things like rank 4s back in Bubble Beat format. Shout out to Bubble Beat. And in addition to that, if you have no cards, you can also draw 2 cards. It has an added effect to it. This card is actually one of the key players inside not only anime, but in a lot of hero decks that wanted to run the Elemental Hero cards. Up until even recently, I saw a lot of builds just including 1 copy, just in case they needed it, or just for fusions for things like Absolute Zero. Things like Absolute Zero give this card a lot more utility as well. So as time has gone on, Bubbleman's kind of aged pretty nicely. So I'm pretty comfortable putting this card inside of the high tier of the hero tier list. Now, it's not necessarily the greatest right now, and obviously, like we said, it's been a little power crept, but this card still holds value, and I still stand by this as a pretty sick card overall. Now, we've had a lot to go on, so we're going to do this kind of in spurts, if you will, talking about certain cards before others. So right now, I think we're actually going to be going over, let's see. Probably going to be talking about and trying to tackle the lesser known of the E-Hero archetype, and that's going to be E-Hero Nosp, Nisp, and Elemental Hero Poison Rose. So the interesting about ranking this one in particular is that they are plant monsters and not warrior types like some of the other Elemental Heroes. And in addition to that, they are true blue Elemental Hero cards, capitalization and everything. We'll go ahead and have one up on the screen right now. We're going to read its effect for you. That's going to be Elemental Hero Knosp, level 3 Earth Plant effect monster that reads each time this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, it gains 100 attack and loses 100 defense. While you control another face-up Elemental Hero monster, your opponent cannot target this card for an attack, and this card can attack your opponent directly. Let's go ahead and read Rose while we're at it as well, because these cards kind of go hand in hand with each other. Honestly, you guys can kind of maybe tell thematically why they go together, but let's read Poison Rose 2 while we're at it. Elemental Hero Poison Rose is a level 6 Earth Plant effect monster that reads, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with Rosebud, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Each time this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, it gains 200 attack and loses 200 defense. Your opponent can only target Elemental Hero Poison Rose for attack. It has a 1900 attack and a booty of 2000 defense. So, you guys might be noticing that these two cards are kind of similar. They both gain and lose attack and defense, and they also have different targeting effects for their Elemental Heroes as far as battling goes. And that's actually really interesting because this is one of the first times we get to see that inside of a quote-unquote modern hero sense. Now, the heroes in general overall have always had this like battle-focused archetype, and a few of them inside the main deck have actual effects they can use. However, these two cards here are special for a different reason because they not only kind of set a weird precedent for some of the other cards that allow these little battle effects to happen, and for future cards like aka Sunriser, It's really interesting because these two cards being plant means that you can't really search them with Rhoda. You can search them with E-Call, which is weird. But overall, they can't really be used as a normal hero monster. It's almost like you have to specifically surround a deck by them. And interesting enough, while searching up these cards for this video, I found that there are several like Elemental Hero Rosebud decks, because this is a whole other subsect of heroes that I almost had no clue about. And honestly, it's not a super well-known hero or hero subsect as well, which is really interesting. But I'm putting them in table 500. Because I feel like the utility of them is just not super great. Sure, you can start some things like E-Call, and you can also maybe like turbo them out and have some cute little interactions with them, especially with like with Knosp or Nosp, because you can attack directly with it. It has some neat little interactions about boosting them quite a bit. But there's also a limit to that, because also their effect has to resolve, so the boosting effect, all that jazz, has to go away at some point. And you can make them huge, which is kind of funny. But other than that, they have no other protection besides battling. So I'm going to put table 500. I'm pretty safe to say these things are table 500. Speaking of table 500, and I almost missed this, Elemental Hero Neo. Bubbleman, that's right. So I know with today's video, we're kind of going off of the main deck hero monsters. And funny enough, Neo Bubbleman is a main deck monster, and like the plant ones, you guys might not know what it does. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that up real quick as well and read that one. There's gonna be quite a few Elemental Heroes because there are so many that you guys might not know what they are. So let's go ahead and just read this one's effect real quick. Elemental Hero Neo Bubbleman is a Water Warrior level 4 effect monster with 800 attack and 1200 defense, so the same stats as our boy Bubbleman. The effect reads, this card cannot be special summoned or set. This card must be special summoned by sending Elemental Hero Bubbleman on your side of the field and Metamorphosis in your hand to the graveyard. Destroy an opponent's monster that battles this card during the end of the damage step. So, you might be noticing this weird thing with this card. Inside of the end of this card was a fusion card. And actually, this card technically should be a fusion card because Jaden summoned it out with things like Metamorphosis. Even if it's card text, it lists to send Metamorphosis from your hand to the graveyard. Now, the interesting thing about this in particular is the thing that, well, one, that would work just fine and dandy. Its stat line and also its level works something like Metamorphosis. But for some reason, this card decided to be a main deck monster. So not only do you have to have Metamorphosis, Bubbleman on your field, but also you have to be able to search out this card to your hand. So weird. Very weird. I actually even put it lower utility-wise than our plant element hero monsters because it's just a weird card that you'd want to turbo out. In addition to that too, sure, you can use it as material as Bubbleman's fusions, but why don't we just use Bubbleman? You get a lot more utility and also you get a lot more value out of that card versus things like Neo Bubbleman. In addition to that, after the damage step happens, after this card is already destroyed, then you can destroy a card. That's it. Otherwise, though, this card's pretty useless. I don't have any trouble saying that. Really cool card art, but overall extremely useless. So that's gonna be it for Neo Bubbleman. Let's go ahead and move on to the next wave of support, and that's going to be Elemental Hero Woodsman and Elemental Hero Ocean. So I like these two cards solidly in the mid tier for a few reasons. The first one being that they technically do the same thing. Woodsman, during the stem of phase, adds a polymerization from your graveyard or deck to your hand. And Ocean adds a hero monster from your graveyard or your field to your hand, which I kind of get the idea behind these two. On the board, these two should be able to recycle your hero monsters and your polymerization for your fusions and start to get your combos going play by play. Now, they are a little bit slow by today's standards, and I kind of understand that. A lot of the Elemental Hero cards are, which I think mid-tier is a good spot for them, though, because they're not that bad to where I can put them in low tier, where I'm like, you know, they don't really have anything going for them. I mean, pretty decent stats on both of them for a little bit. Good typings on both of them. You can use them not only for their extra deck monster, Terra Firma, but also just in general for things like Absolute Zero and also for Gaia. In addition to that too, I think that Woodsman alone is not that bad of a card even for just most general polymerization decks. I mean, back in the day, of course, this card was much more powerful, and now saying that's a little bit goofy. But this card is pretty cool, especially because if it's on the field, yeah, you do get that recycling effect, and you also get it from your deck. I think that I could put Ocean maybe in low tier because of the fact that it only gets it from your graveyard and your field, and I understand that potentially this could have cool interactions with things like Absolute Zero, or it used to have cool things with Absolute Zero, rather. And also, in addition to that, if you, let's say, need something that's inside your graveyard, like, I need to make this fusion now, you could add that back to hand with things like Ocean. But the thing is that you have to have it on your standby phase, and if it's not on your standby phase, then, you know, honestly, I think these cards are getting run over at the very least in the standby phase. So, I don't know. I think mid-tier is probably just an okay spot for these two. They kind of have the cool little same effect, and I love how in the manga they were much more prevalent, but in real life, they're just alright. They just alright. Only marginally better than our vanilla heroes, so to speak. Okay, so the next one we're going to be ranking is going to be a little bit weird ones. These two are both level 4. These two are both light hero monsters that have such strange effects. So, first things first, Elemental Hero Flash. We actually might rate this one a little bit lower on the tier list, actually, funny enough. And also, then we have Elemental Hero Voltic, which we're going to rate actually a little bit above the low tiers, funny enough. So, let's go ahead and read these two cards, and then we can guys get an idea of what is going on here. So Elemental Hero Flash is a light level 4 warrior effect monster that reads, when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card and 3 Elemental Hero monsters with different names from your graveyard and target 1 normal spell card in your graveyard and add that target to hand. And Elemental Hero Voltic is a level 4 light thunder effect monster with 1000 attack and 1500 defense that reads, when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target 1 of your banished Elemental Hero monsters and special summon that target. So, another weird set of cards. These cards, I think, are supposed to kind of go hand in hand with each other. Not necessarily in that they're like, you know, kind of like Woodsman and Ocean, where they have kind of similar effects, but they're both like electrical themed, mainly part of like the Sparkman Brigade or something like that. Really, really interesting cards for a few reasons. Now, I'm going to be ranking them in the low tier section almost definitively for a few reasons. One, Flash depends way too much on that. When it's destroyed, banish, and then you can add that normal spell back. I guess it's supposed to kind of help you get that poly back to your hand, and technically it could just be any normal spell, but it's a little bit too slow, and also I don't even think for the time that it came out it was really that good. And stat line is also pretty rough too, and I guess you could use it to make things like the Shining if you really wanted to, but just overall, pretty bad hero card. Now, the Voltic is really interesting, not only being a Thunder, so another one of those differently typed hero monsters, kind of like our plant brethren and sisterin down below. But here's the thing. This stat line is way too weak for that effect, so whenever it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, then you can add that card back, which I think would be really cool, especially there's interesting interactions you could do potentially nowadays with things like Honest Neos, but I think overall, in general, that's just a little bit too weak. If it was like 1900 or 1800, that card would actually be pretty good. I can even see that not necessarily working, let's say, nowadays for things, and could have some cheesy interactions now, but back in the day, I can see that working out pretty well, especially getting those recurring resources with things like Miracle Fusion back to your hand. That's a lot more important to me, but 1000 attack is pretty low. That's pretty shallow. So the Elemental Hero Voltic and Elemental Hero Flash are going to be in those low tier slots. Slots. There you go. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next couple waves of cards. And I can't believe, by the way, that we forgot about Elemental Hero Wildheart. That's right. So we're going to put Wildheart just a little bit above in the mid-tier section with Ocean and also with Woodsman. Now, here's what happened with Wildheart. First off, I didn't see it. There's a lot of hero cards here. That's why we forgot about it. But more importantly, the reason I'm putting him in mid-tier, it's just a solid beater. If 1500 attack that's unaffected by trap cards, that's not only pretty good inside of was pretty good inside of things like Duel Links, but in addition to that, in my time playing Duel Links, I found that this card actually had a lot more utility than I maybe quite thought initially. Yes, you can also use it for its initial fusion cards. However, being unaffected by anything, by any blanket, statement inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unaffected by spell cards, unaffected by monster effects, unaffected by trap cards. This is probably one of the worst ones to be if you're unaffected purely by trap cards, and that's about it, that's all you have. But that can be pretty useful inside of certain matchups, and in addition to that too, that's just in general a nice effect to have for most Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. So that's really kind of funny that it's almost ahead of its time in a way. Now there are other cards that had this effect too. One of them that comes to mind is that other warrior monster that's 1500 that's unaffected by trap cards, blah blah blah. But this one in particular is really cool because you can not only search it with things like Rhoda, like Ecall, making it a little more consistent. This is a pretty powerful card in general. Honestly, I love the card art. It's a super cool card. I love its fusions too. Ahead of its time, if I had to say anything about that. Ahead of its time, but solidly mid-tier. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to another wave of hero support. Let's go ahead and go turn up the heat a little bit and add our Elemental Hero Heat and Lady Heat inside of this tier list. Lady Heat, fun enough, I'm actually going to put inside of the Table 500 slot. I know it's a little bit weird considering that this card actually might have a little more utility than things like Flash and also Voltic, but the thing is that this card does burn damage, and it's part of this weird like attack modulation era of hero monsters that these cards kind of do different things with their own with damage and with their own attacks and defense. This card in particular, you know, you inflict 200 points of damage at every end phase for each elemental hero monster you control. So in theory, now you can do 6 hero monsters on board at total, so you can do a total of 1200 burn damage to your opponent. I can see that being useful for some OTKs or for finishing off people. However, really cheesy. I don't really think this card's worth keeping around. Its stat line is 1300 attack points, so it's not even really that big. So I don't really know. Conversely though, I think that having Elemental Hero Heat, honestly I'd put almost in the high tier. Bottom high tier for sure, because this card is just an 1800 beater that gains 200 attack points for every, 200 attack points for, for every single Elemental Hero card that you control. So immediately when you summon out onto the field, it's 1800 body. Strongest of the main deck hero monsters that we've seen so far that you can normal summon. Funny enough. And that's actually kind of a neat thing that I didn't necessarily realize and how important that was. It's that the attack points for such an aggressive archetype, for a battle-focused archetype, is really important. And Heat's really cool. I think Heat also has great artwork, and Lady Heat, all the little fire ones have great artwork, actually, fun enough. But these two in particular I have to rate so far apart because one is much more of a utility beater, and the other one has a neat little burn effect, but not even in Duel Links was that really useful. Heat was also super sick though, and I think that it's a great card, especially just for getting over certain things. And in a slower format, I've seen that being one of the better cards to have inside of the hero deck, if available. So next, we're gonna be rating Elemental Hero Prisma. And this is actually funny enough, I'm actually going to put Prisma in the high mid-tier slot. Initially, I was not going to put this card in mid-tier, I was going to put it maybe low-end, high-tier. But the more I started to think about it, you know, you have to reveal that specific fusion monster to activate its effect. Essentially what happens is that you can reveal a fusion monster from your extra deck, and then this name becomes the name of that hero monster that's specifically listed on that card. And that way you can use it for fusion material, that way you can kind of essentially tutor out your different fusion monsters. And it's actually pretty neat interactions that you can get with a strictly fusion-based archetype. However, King of Swamp and Beast King of the Swamp do this card's effect a little bit better. That way you can they just count as the fusion material. And that'd be cool if this card could just count as the fusion material for an Elemental Hero monster. So if you ever had to retrain this card, though it has like a cool little like theme, it's like supposed to reflect heroes and like morph and all that jazz. I think in particular this card needs to have a thing that says like, or the retrain, not necessarily, or errata, says, oh, you know, this card counts as a hero monster for your hero summon. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be cool for a specific hero thing. That's my opinion. But mid tier is okay with that because you can get a lot of really neat interactions with that. Next, moving on, I think we're gonna go for a little guy, and that's gonna go with Ice Edge. So Elemental Hero Ice Edge is a cute little monster that has a cute little effect. So this card can attack your opponent directly, and if it inflicts damage, you can discard a card and then also destroy a spell trap card on the field. Funny enough, you guys might be noticing the visual similarities to cards like Absolute Zero. Interesting enough, this card destroys spell and traps, Absolute Zero destroys monsters. Who knew? This little guy is really cute. So he's like... It's really funny because they actually ran this card back in Duel Links. I think I ran it out of one of. It's a water monster, so you can use it for its utility effects and for its, essentially for its typing to get things like Absolute Zero out in the field. But there is some value to it being a mid-tier because of the destruction effect and because it can attack your opponent directly and all this jazz. So there's really cool interactions that you can have with this card outside of its just general utility use as a water type hero monster. And you can search it, so technically it's like searchable spot removal. He's just kind of cute and also just kind of nice. I love how he's like a mini Absolute Zero, and then he's like he's like the sidekick to Absolute Zero almost. That's kind of where my headcanon's at with that one. So that's where I'm putting that one. And I can't believe we almost forgot about another classic hero, Captain Gold. Captain Gold. Okay. So here's the thing with Captain Gold. It is a 2100 monster, and you guys might be more familiar with the more recent Captain Gold with the Dusted Gold, the evil hero monster, which has much more utility. So you can discard this card at a Skyscraper to your hand, and if Skyscraper is not on the field, this card is destroyed. I'm so glad we got a retrain for this. So the evil hero Dusted Gold actually fixes this card in a lot of ways. The first being that it adds a card that you can actually use to extend your plays with something like the Dark Calling from your deck to your hand. If this card adds Miracle Fusion to your hand, this card becomes insane. This card becomes broken. But it also fixes it to where if you have a fusion monster on board, then you can attack with something like a Dusted Gold. But with this card, you have to have Skyscraper up. So not only do you have to play Skyscraper, it has to be up for this card to become a decent 2100 beater. Really cool design though. And actually, I didn't necessarily notice this before, by the way. But if you guys have not noticed, initially I thought, oh, Sunrise is for Sinitrix and also for Blade Edge. But now, re-looking at it, I'm like, wait, no. Sunrise has the blue cape. There's only one hero that wears a cape. Technically, Bubbleman wears a cape. But only one hero that wears a cape. And that's a Dusted Gold. And he's the horns. And he's gold. And he has like the little rivets. Maybe it's like a combination, but it blew my mind. It blew my mind re-looking at this card to be like, oh wait, no. Captain Gold exists. Is Brasinitrix Captain Gold? That's actually insane. So, there's that. Say la vie. Let's go ahead and move on. Anyways, next let's go ahead and talk about Neos Alias. So we're going to put Neos Alias in the high tier. That's right. This card is really interesting because, yes, technically it's supposed to be like the sidekick companion to Neos. 1900 body, very, very effective. Bubble Beat format, this card is a powerhouse. In addition to that, in alternate formats as well, this thing is also pretty strong. Just kind of in general, a good card that you can search for material, not only for the Shining, but also for other generic hero monsters. But in addition to that too, level 4, you can use it for utility for your rank 4s, and big body, this card was instrumental inside of Bubble Beat. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. That's why it's in the high tier. It's a pretty solid card overall, and I couldn't put Heat in high tier for beating purposes unless I also put this card in there as well. Very, very strong. The strongest of the main deck heroes, I believe, that's not boosted. So there's an asterisk there because technically stuff like Blazeman can do it. Speaking of Blazeman, let's go ahead and move on to the new era of heroes and potentially the final main deck heroes that we're going to be talking about today, unless I've forgotten anything, which is very, very possible because I've done that in this video. We're actually going into the era of hero monsters that's really inspired by Kamen Rider. Now, we've kind of been getting that a little bit with things like really early, like Sparkman, or Flash, or Voltic, other cards like that, but the original elements of heroes are all kind of based off of different comic book heroes, things like Angel, things like Dark Phoenix, Clayman, things like Juggernaut. So really interesting choices. Batman for things like Bubbleman. Can't believe almost forgot that. But now we're moving into what I would kind of essentially say the masked hero era, the armor and masked hero, which is a very much like a Japanese kind of hero, like archetype or theming with its artwork. Interestingly enough, we have that over in the States. You guys might recognize that as Power Rangers. So let's talk about the Power Rangers of the hero archetypes. They're actually some of the better hero cards to come out. So first things first, the huge question is Swolelax. Where do you rate Elements of Hero Blazeman? Blazeman is sadly mid-tier. Now, I wanted to put it inside of high tier. Do not get me wrong. Do not get me wrong on this one. Mid-tier is probably where I place this one because it's not really that great. You have to waste your normal summon for it. There's a card that already does it better right now. I get for its time. This card was insane. Adding a polymerization to your deck on normal summon or loading up your graveyard and this card becomes a card. But not only does this card restrict you from summoning if you want to activate its Foolish Burial effect, but you can only do one or the other. I made a whole video on this a couple years ago. And I still stand by that it's just okay. Why is this one in mid tier and not over Heat or Bubbleman? It's because honestly, like for the restriction alone, this card is actually pretty rough. And outside of that too, the attack modulation can sometimes come up, but not really. And the searching for poly is cool, but like I said, nowadays we don't really even need that. And back in the day where that was really nice, I don't know. It does not necessarily age that well. This is definitely one of the more modern heroes that doesn't necessarily age incredibly well. And for that reason alone, I'm putting it inside of the mid tier. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I know this is kind of a heated debate, but it is a debate nonetheless. So, moving on to our next couple heroes, we are going to be talking about Elemental Hero Solid Soldier, which I'm going to put inside of the high tier section. And also, let's go ahead and talk about while we're at it, Elemental Hero Shadow Mist inside of the high tier as well. I'm actually going to arguably put above Elemental Hero Solid Soldier. For this reason too. So these two cards are really interesting because they can actually work in tandem with each other. Obviously Shadow Mist coming out first, so let's talk about that. I'm putting this one a little bit higher because not only does this add a little bit more of the consistency of the deck because you can search out cards and send this card to graveyard, but if you really need mass change to go into powerful cards like Darklaw, now you finally can. Searchable mass change is crazy, not only because you can turn this card too into one of the most powerful hero monsters to ever grace this earth. In addition to that, speaking of Earth, gosh, wow, it is late. Essentially, Solid Soldier is a pretty decent extender and starter out for your card starter for this deck to go into. And not only that, you can go into things like Master Hero Diane, use it for things like Gaia, and you can not only activate its special summon effect, but also you can activate its second effect to revive from the graveyard in the same turn. That gives it a lot of utility. But in addition to that as well, we've been really needing something like this for heroes for a while. Heroes have really kind of struggled with that one normal summon it kind of has, because you initially just wanted to go into things like Stratos, and maybe you want to go into things like Neo's Alias back in the day. You kind of have to like really play around that normal summon in quite a bit of ways. Now we have different ways of special summoning now, of course, the Vision heroes, but this card in particular does give an extra extension, a little more material on board for your heroes to work with, and activates those effects like Shadow Mist and like Stratos. Speaking of Stratos, we're going to be getting to him in just a second. We're going to be talking about Elemental Hero, Liquid Soldier. That's right, I like Liquid Soldier in the top tier. This card over something like Solid Soldier, because Solid Soldier, while yes, it is pretty good, and is a staple inside of modern hero decks, and is a one-of, just like Liquid Soldier, but Liquid Soldier gets you a lot more mileage out of its one card. It's not only a monster reborn inside of the archetype that you can search when it's normal summoned, but also, and more likely, you use it to draw 2 cards if it's used as fusion material, and you can get an absolute 0 from it. Usually what you want to do with this card is send it to the graveyard, and you can draw 2 cards, banish so you can draw 2 cards. This card is really good, and honestly is one of the best Elemental Hero cards to come out in the last, decade or so. It's actually insane how much this added to the deck without even really doing that much. We didn't need this, but Konami decided, hey, you know what, we're just going to give heroes a little more support. And I appreciate that so much, and this card is actually insane for it. Would I rather have Solid Soldier or Liquid Man? I can't really say at the moment. I think right now, my current feelings of the fact that Liquid Soldier is a little more utility-based, and I can use him a lot better and a lot easier than I can with something like Solid Soldier. In addition to that, his fusion that you would summon off him Absolute Zero is a little better and much more utility-based than something like Gaia or something like Diane. Acid's also an insane card, so this card is just really solid. And that leads me into the best hero of them all. Now, you guys know I have like a weird feeling about Stratos sometimes, but Stratos I cannot deny. I can't deny it. Stratos is a straight rider. Stratos being top tier should not come to any surprise to you guys. Not only non-targeting destruction of back row, can search any hero monster from your deck to your hand. This card was banned. This card was just let go from the ban list. We were screaming free Stratos for years. And now we finally have it, and it's great to have it into this myriad of hero decks, this omni hero decks that it can now finally shine. Probably stronger than it ever has before. The pool of hero cards is actually insane. You not only can search this card with things like Rhoda, E-Call, things like Shadow Mist now. This card was insane back in the day. This card is actually insane now. One of the best cards to ever come out inside of the entire game, in my opinion. In addition to that too, this card is aged like fine wine. Fine wine. It is aged so well, and I cannot believe how good it really does transition into the archetype. Now, that might be a little bit weird because you're like, oh, well, of course, it searches things and also destroys things. But the ways that you can like optimize that and you can use that to your advantage inside the deck, out of its normal summon or out of its special summon back from the graveyard, whatever, is really important. And with things like A Hero Lives on the table, I'm surprised that we haven't been seeing more interactions with that. Now, obviously, it's at 1, but if that were ever to come back to higher and higher numbers, 2 and 3, then Stratos is a lot more popular, and I think this deck gets a lot more insane. So, and that alone, just because of that, Stratos adds the consistency, adds the power, 1800 bodies, so it's really powerful, probably the best hero out of there. And before we wrap up this video, I want to talk about the lone wolf of the deck, Elemental Hero Honest, Neos, being in high tier. Funny enough, I actually might want to put him a little above these guys here. He is the one card you're always going to want, always going to need. He is the loyal single card that you have in your deck. You see him, you're happy. You search him, you're happy. 2,500 boost from your hand onto an elemental hero monster for OTKs, for getting over big beaters. This guy is nuts. You can summon Stratos, search him from your deck, get over things like Window. You can search him with E-Call, because there's no restriction on that. He's actually really great. My one gripe about him, I'll get into in a later video. But this card is a solid high tier as well. A lot of the modern hero cards you might be noticing a little bit higher. You might be seeing some guys here, but that's going to be it for our Elemental Hero tier list, part 1. Like I said, if you guys want to see part 2, we're going to go over these fusion heroes right here. The fusion heroes are actually really interesting. I love a lot of these interactions with them. I'll be ranking them in a different video. If this video gets 50 likes, 50, I will be dropping that early, and you guys can see all that goodness right then and there. But let me know what you guys think of this tier list in the comment section down below. Do you guys agree with it? Do you guys disagree with it? Where would you guys place these certain heroes on this list as well? Do you guys like things like Elemental Hero Voltic? I'd actually be really curious to know if you guys even know what those like do, because I had actually had to do a little bit of research on some of them, like the Rosebud and the Canopes. I was like, wait, what? Those are Elemental Heroes? Like, I kind of knew that. I was like, oh yeah, there's like plant ones, but I didn't necessarily know exactly what they did. So this is going to be my definitive tier list. In fact, might be the definitive tier list. No debates. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you want more, please subscribe. Get more videos coming in the pipeline, so stay tuned for that if you would like to. In addition to that, follow me on Twitter at Swolelax. You guys will be able to see every single time we go live with the live streams that we've been doing very, very often. But for now, I'm going to be going and probably go to sleep. Watch this out of my face. All that jazz. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.